Hello, boys and girls. It is time for Writer's Workshop. This is Miss Alpine here, and today we are starting a new writing unit, but we're going to go back to narratives. And we're going to be talking about what is a narrative today and how we can brainstorm ideas based off of a given prompt. Now, remember, when we write for pie, for to either persuade, inform, or entertain. And today and for the next few weeks, we are going to be entertaining with some fun narrative stories. So let's review and just take a look again at what a narrative is. Now, a narrative is going to tell a fictional story. This is an imaginative narrative. Now, we're going to be doing realistic fiction. So we want to make sure that it's something that could really happen, but again, it's still going to be a made up story. And in this story, it has to have a very clear beginning, middle, and end. We want to introduce in the beginning our characters, our setting, and kind of give a little bit of a tease of what our plot or the problem is going to be. The plot or the problem, of course, has to be solved in the end of our story. And especially this time around, we really want to focus on, and we're going to be learning how to include dialogue. And dialogue is the words that the people in the story would actually say. And like any good narrative, we have to use some time order words or transition words that will help to show the sequence of the events. So things like first, next, then, and finally. Just a reminder, here is a quick video about what realistic fiction is.
Realistic Fiction Writing for Kids. Episode 1. What is it? Realistic fiction is a genre or type of writing. Realistic means that something seems real. Fiction means stories that are not real. So realistic fiction is a type of writing that seems like it could be real, but it isn't. The things that happen in the story could really happen though. In realistic fiction stories, the characters seem like they could be real people or animals, but they usually aren't. That means no vampires or superheroes, just regular people. The same is true for the setting. A realistic fiction story wouldn't take place on the moon because that's not realistic. It may take place in a park or at a school. The events that happen in the story are also realistic. The problems that the characters face are real problems that could really happen to real people. So when we write realistic fiction, we use our imagination to create stories that haven't actually happened, but they could. Are you ready to start writing your own realistic fiction story? Check out episode 2 to learn how to start brainstorming ideas.
Okay, so here is an example of a realistic fiction narrative, and this is called a camping surprise. Let's read it and see if this has everything it needs to be a narrative. If it has an introduction that introduces characters, setting, and the plot. If it has an actual plot that has a dun dun dun, the problem, and if there's some kind of solution in it. It says, last summer, Mark and his father went on their very first camping trip together. They decided to visit a beautiful lake in the mountains near their town. Mark was so excited because he had always wanted to go camping, but he was also a bit nervous and afraid of the dangerous animals he might see in the wild. When Mark and his father arrived to their camping spot, they first set up their tent and then went for a long hike. When they returned, they set up a campfire, ate dinner, sang lively songs, and told terrifying stories. Mark was having so much fun. Exhausted from the long day, Mark and his father crawled into their tent and they both fell right to sleep. The next morning, Mark awoke to strange noises, but his father was still sound asleep. Certain the horrifying noises were coming from a vicious animal on the hunt, Mark curled up in his sleeping bag and didn't make a sound. Finally, he decided he couldn't hide all morning, so he had to face his fears and go outside to confront the terrifying animal. As he slowly poked his head out of the tent's opening, he discovered the vicious animal was nothing more than a fluffy little squirrel who was dropping acorns on the roof of the tent. As Mark walked out of the tent, relieved, he tripped over his backpack. "Oh no, they ate all my snacks!" exclaimed Mark. He realized he had left his backpack out by mistake, and raccoons must have ripped it open in the night and stolen his nuts, fruits, and potato chips. "I will never make that mistake again," he sighed. Although Mark was upset that raccoons ate his snacks, he was proud of himself for facing his fears. Plus, he sure had a funny story to tell everyone once he got home. Okay, so that narrative follows our narrative outline, that example. So remember this, when we looked at this image before, we want to think of our narratives kind of like a roller coaster. We want to kind of start slow and just introduce our characters, the setting, which is where and when it's taking place, and a little bit of the problem. We want to kind of develop what happens with those characters and the events, and we're going to kind of increase that suspense to what happens, and all the way at the top, this is that climax or the main problem or plot, the dun dun dun. But after that, we need to have that falling action where we start finding what the solution was and kind of reflecting back on the events themselves and what the resolution could be. Now, when we look at our graphic organizer, and we'll look at this more later, but remember, we're going to just set up 3 basic paragraphs, and we want to, of course, have an introduction. Again, it has our characters, our setting, and a little bit about the situation. But really, the body is where most of our story is going to take place. And hopefully you remember, in the body, we're going to do the setup, which explains how it all began, the mix-up, and describe what the actual problem is, and then the fix-up. And we're going to say, how was that solved? And then in the very last paragraph, your conclusion paragraph, we really want to kind of just do a little reflection on the events. So we're going to do the look back, where we reflect back on the experience, and then we're going to wrap it up and look up. Remember, the wrap up is just say what kind of happened after the main problem, but the look up is what was learned. So this is our basic graphic organizer and the organization that we will follow when we go to write our own narratives. Now remember, when you are given an assignment, a narrative assignment, we have a process, the writing process. You don't just go and you write a final draft. You always want to start with your pre-writing. And today we're going to look at one way that we can start brainstorming ideas to come up with some plot ideas for our own narratives. And this, of course, would fall under the trait of ideas. So let's say you're given this writing prompt. It says, write a fictional narrative story about a family who is on a tropical island vacation when something unexpected happens. Okay, well, how can you start brainstorming ideas? And I don't want you to think of like the whole story itself, but always start with the plot. Always think about, what is my problem going to be? Once you know what your problem is going to be, well, then you can develop your characters and your setting, and you already know what your problem is going to be. So how did you get to that problem? Then explain what is it, and then how would you solve that problem in your own narrative? And one way that we can start brainstorming plot ideas is by using this ABC chart. Now, we've used this before, but I like this just because it kind of gives me a little guide, and I can just use each one of these letters to kind of generate some words in my mind and think, okay, what can my plot or probably be about a family vacation? And the family's on a tropical island, but then, dun, 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 what could happen? Well, you could go through and think A, what could happen that starts with an A, and then go to B, and then go to C, or just kind of pick and choose any letters you want. But when I was doing this, I couldn't think of anything for A or B. But then I thought, oh, well, what if they were going swimming and they got caught in seaweed? That would be a pretty big problem. And so maybe that would be a good idea for a plot. And then I kind of kept going, well, D, E, F. And I thought, well, what if they were fishing? Oh, wait, That's not really a problem though. But what if they were fishing on a boat and all of a sudden flying fish attack them and all these flying fish start going up on the boat and they're flying everywhere and flipping around everywhere? Well, that could definitely be a plot for this family that's on their vacation. And then I kind of kept going and I thought, oh, I could think of one more. I would not want for what if you woke up, this family was on their vacation and they were in this beautiful hotel room, but they woke up and found an iguana in their bed. Ah! Okay. Now, these are all different problems that could occur to this family that's on this vacation on a tropical island. Now, make sure you're thinking about who your characters are here because it's about a family. They're on a vacation and they're on a tropical island. And so kind of think about like what might they do on a tropical island? Where would they be? What sort of things might they do while they're there? And that will help you to brainstorm these plot and problem ideas. So for your writing assignment today, you're going to do just like I did here, and you're going to come up with some plot ideas for this family that's going on a vacation on a tropical island. What could their plot or problem be while they're on this vacation? And come up with at least 5 different letters of what you think could be the plot or problem. All right, that's it. Let's go be writers.